we brought it with an atom bomb. Okay. But Japan did not formally surrender until
Right.
about a month.
Right.
During that month, Russia declared war on Japan. Now, as soon as the bomb was dropped, Russia knew it was over. So what they decided to come in and declare war against Japan, because they weren't going to do anything, but they would get in on whatever goodies there were. See? Just, okay. So what they did was, over on the mainland, near Japan, on the mainland, Japan had a Navy base, an air base up there. Japan had to, when they were defeated, they all left, went home, whatever. Russia moved over and took over the air base. It was, instead of being Japanese, it's now Russian. But I don't think our people knew about it. See, we didn't have satellites up there taking pictures.
Right.
And nobody was paying attention to what was going on over the mainland. But they wanted to have nice new maps of Japan and the shoreline of the mainland, which they never had because all the years since we'd had photographic equipment that could do it, Japan was in control of it. We couldn't go take pictures.
Right.
Okay. So they kept these boys, reconnaissance boys, in the service and didn't send them home when the war was over. They kept them there. Didn't send them home. They said, we need you. So they didn't get home until 3 months, 4 months into the next year. Crazy. But that's what happened. Anyway, so what they do, they said, all right, instead of, just flying over and looking to see what the enemy's doing and reporting back, we want you to take pictures of the coastline of Japan. And we want you to take pictures of the shoreline of the mainland. We're going to you can make new maps for us. So that's what they do. There was a division of Recon 2 that was making maps for the government. Okay, so Bill was in the maintenance. They didn't let him fly because he was testing something, because he was the only one that knew how to install the equipment.
He was too valuable to him.
You don't fly. Okay. So anyway, several things happened after the war was over. It's just a shame that they happened, but they did happen. But anyway, one of the things that happened was that one of the converted, big old B-24 bomber, been converted into a photographic thing. That's what they'd been flying for a couple of years. Okay, here they send a plane over the coastline of the mainland, and the Russians send up Storm fighters and shoot it down. American airplane. Now this is our ally, friend, Russia. It's not an enemy. No, not an enemy plane coming over. They shoot it down, and they machine gun the survivors who were parachute out. They machine gunned them as they hung in their parachute.
Is this documented?
Yeah. Well, hell, they probably destroyed all the records. We don't know. We don't know. This is why it would be hard to get the records.
You know that from Bill, that incident happened.
Yeah. And his friend that came to visit us, okay, after the war, the guy that was flying the plane, or the radio man, radioed back to where Bill's people were, the headquarters on Guam. They radioed back what had happened. They were shooting at us, Russian stormfix. And so they were bailing out. And then they went and they found some of the bodies in the bay offshore. And the bodies had been shot all over with bullets from the airplane machine guns.
Wow.
Okay. So the people back in Guam heard this, like Bill, and they just looked at each other. He said they just looked at each other, and they started going to the place they had there, and they were started taking out the photographic equipment, and they knew they still kept the bomb shackles that they'd removed a long time ago. They put them back in the plane, and they got the film out, and they knew where the bombs were. And they went and got the bombs, and they put the bombs back in, and they worked all night long. They didn't say boo to anybody. They just started doing it. And so before daylight, they got out on the runway and were ready to take off and going to go bomb that Russian
The
air
Russians,
base.
yeah.
Okay. Well, suddenly there's people on the runway stopping them. There's equipment out there. They stopped it. They said it was a Marine general. I didn't know Marines had generals, but that's what he says it was. And he was out there, and he hauled at them to stand down, and they were ordered to get out of the planes, and they were ordered to go sit in the mess hall. And they called in all the others from that group, made them sit in there, and they questioned them, and they said we were going to charge them with mutiny. And he said, there was no mutiny. We'd fight them. And then it was going to charge them with this, that, and the other thing. Well, they were not disobeying orders because they didn't ask for any orders. They just decided to do it.
Right.
Now, of course, this is wrong, but they couldn't think of what to do. So, his story was always that they decided finally the best thing to do was just to send them home. They were eligible for discharge, had been for a long time. They would just send them home, and when they got home they were going to make them, to put the fear of God in them. You do not ever, ever mention this incident to anybody, as long as you live. If we hear that you have told anybody, we will come and get you, and you will be in Portsmouth prison. Because these are strict orders. You will not tell anybody anything about this. And for 25 years, he never told me anything. Okay. Well, this guy that came to visit us said he never told his wife because he was afraid she'd talk and then he'd be in trouble. So you see, they made him believe that. Okay. They were afraid if they court-martialed them, there would be publicity.
Right.
There would be a record. And how they didn't want there to be Washington, apparently. Now, we think this is supposed. What people from Washington had said, we don't want any record of what the Russians did. So don't do anything that will make a record of that.
Right.
Because the American people were mostly of the opinion that the next war was going to be with Russia. Anyway, they thought we were going to be. There was an awful lot of people saying we'll be there's no use celebrating the end of the war because we're going to be fighting Russia.
Right. Even I believed that.
Okay, all right. See, there was that thought. So if that had become public, that might have started the whole damn thing right there. See?
Right.
And so you can understand they wanted that hushed up.
Of course.
Yes. So how do you hush it up when you got guys like Bill Mellor in there who were going to go blow them to hell, How are you going to hush it up? You have to make them believe that they are going to be in the biggest trouble, go to prison if they talk about it.
Right.
And when they get home, all they want to do is forget about the whole thing. They want to forget everything about the war, about the service. And so they didn't talk about it. Well, anyway, now, was it after that? See, there's 5 things that happened between the Japanese surrender and Bill and his buddies getting sent home. And one of them was that the plane that Bill usually flew, if he was going to fly, that hit a mountain in Japan. Hit a mountain and everybody killed. Okay? Now, at some point in there, not exactly sure when, 5 of them, including Bill Mellor, were sent into the ground of Nagasaki, which was red hot with radiation.
Right.
And what if it had killed them? Who would have known what happened to them? What would have happened? Nothing. Even if they'd been sent home and died of radiation sickness, would his parents have known what the hell happened? No.
No.
Would old Dr. Jones have known? No.
No.
Nobody knew about radiation stuff.
Right.
So they could have I'm just saying, they could have eliminated the main ones that were involved in the attempt to bomb Russia.
Right. Who was the general you said that
Well, see, I wrote down when I wrote this 10 years ago just that they were answerable to Admiral J.W. McAuliffe. Now, we've been researching him, and we're not sure that that's right. Kathy says what she's finding it might have been Macaulay. We think that General McAuliffe, we were trying to look up General McAuliffe that you said your group was answerable to.
Uh-huh.
You remember McAuliffe?
Yeah.
Okay. She couldn't find him. She said there was one called Macaulay, and I thought, well, Bill wasn't too good at names. He maybe that was Macaulay. We don't know.
What was his first name? Do you know?
No, James, I think, but they just went by initials, JW or JD or something. Anyway, they're looking him up. But anyway, I wrote in Bill's Navy years. I wrote about what he told me, that there was a mystery that they never found one of the boys' bodies, and I don't want to talk about that. It upsets him. But that there was a stranger on board that they didn't know why he was on board, and that his body wasn't found either. So there might have been something going on that plane, and maybe that's why they hit the mountain. Somebody might have been there to make sure they hit the mountain. Look, you could make us. I'm not saying that there was any evil intent going on here at all, but I'm just saying, if you were writing a book that you wanted to sell a book, and you could make a story out of it, couldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
You could make a darn good story. Be bad, but you could make. I'm not saying, but the fact that there's a possibility of monkey business means that we'll probably have a hard time getting any records, because there was motivation for them to
a cover-up, sure.
Yeah, cover up or destroy whatever records they had. So anyway, it's interesting. I'll let you know what happens. I mean, if we get anywhere with this.
You wrote all of that in Bill's Navy years? Because I have Bill's Navy
So
years.
no, I didn't know a lot of this. I didn't write anything about going into Nagasaki because
You didn't know about it?
No, he had, when we were first married, he was having such nightmares, and he told me about it. But he told me they had when he went in, they had been given something to show if they had radiation.
Right.
Okay, I'm dumb. The radiation thing is new. I put it out. I thought the Navy took care of them. I won't worry about it.
Right.
And I've forgotten all about it until, what was it, maybe a second, I guess. Well, at some point he decided to talk about it.
Well, he talked to me about it a couple months ago.
Yeah, well, I think in 2012 I wrote Bill's Navy years, but I didn't know about it then, or didn't remember. And so the only thing that would tie in with it possibly was the mystery about why they didn't find a couple of bodies on the plane that crashed, supposedly.
Now,
Yeah.
you said it hit a mountain. Wasn't there a plane that Bill was telling me about that ran down the runway and crashed?
No, that was a different one. I told about that. I'd heard about that one. That's where he broke his ribs. Yeah. Oh yeah, I knew about that one. But that was on Guam. That was right where their air base was when it was landing. It ran across a ditch and stuff. Okay. No, this is over. This was on Japan at Nagasaki within just a few months. See, he was sent home in April of 46. And the bomb had been dropped in August of 45. You just go around to, the end of the year, and then April, and that's when he was sent home. So all these things happened in that length of time. These weird things happened. the Russians taking over that airfield and shooting down the plane, that must have been happening early, but I don't know, because they're going after it. Had to happen right after that. In other words, if the plane was shot down one day, within that 24 hours they tried to go and take vengeance. Okay, so that's all one day. And if they're going to send him home, my impression was that they decided to send him home right away after that, because they couldn't decide what else to do.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that wasn't what they did. That's all he wanted to talk about. But maybe they did other stuff before they gave up and decided to just send him home. But they were
that kind of makes sense.
They were in a quandary, and they may have said, "Let's try this and see what happens." And it didn't quite work, so they said, "Well, the ones that are left, we'll just send them home and hope they're so happy to get home they won't even think about this anymore. And if we tell them we'll come and get them and put them in prison, then they'll be careful not to speak about it." And it worked, as far as I know. Did you ever hear about the Russians shooting down one of our planes when we weren't at war with them at all?
No.
So anyway, it's an interesting story. And I have written down just what we know, and I'm going to add it to Bill's stories, to his Navy stories I'm putting in the back, with something about Nagasaki and so forth. I'm going to put that, though. I was going to copy it. I was ready to copy it, and my printer. Yeah. I pushed the button to make a print, and it was out of paper. And the printer tried to print with no paper, and it did something weird, and it's pouting and, sitting there being...
Do you need me to look at it, or is it fixed?
No, I unplugged it, and I thought if it sits there unplugged, all the programming will...
reset itself.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't tried it today, but that was last night. I said...
No, if that's something you want me to do, if you want me to look at it, I will.
Well, we'll try it. We'll try pushing the button again and see if it prints.
Yeah.
I have to plug. I might need your help plugging it in.
Sure.
Some of those plugs are hard for me to work over behind.
Right. I'll be more than happy to help you.
All right, just think about it. So you've been recording what I'm telling you. Well, I don't know. But Kathy says this man that she's been talking to is very kind and helpful and very encouraging. But that doesn't mean that he will make a final decision. He has already said, he emailed to her that he had already sent the stuff on to where it had to go. And he didn't. He has not told her you have to get the service record. Well, we've got the general service record.
Well, don't you think the man is gonna do the search for the service record?
He could. He's got enough information to do it. Maybe he will. I think so.
What are the basic records that you have?
It's just his discharge records, his discharge
Okay.
papers. It lists what he was assigned to. And shows he was assigned to Recon 2 based on a Ghana field at Guam. And these were people, this was under Recon 2 that all this stuff happened.
Right. I'd like to see that sometime.
Well,
Okay.
Well,
I'll fix your printer.
what I just did was before we did all this research, I had written a statement, and he signed it, and I signed it as the person who wrote. I said, "This is." I was transcribed from your what do you call it?
My recording that I gave Kathy?
Yeah. I said I transcribed it, and he signed it. I signed it and dated it. He signed it and dated it, and so she's got a copy of that. So that's what this is. That I was making more copies of that to put in the book. But other than that, the thing I wrote recently is like just what I just told you about the timeline. But if this is the timeline of what we know, then all these things happened in between these two dates. But we do not have the exact dates, so we don't know which was first and which was last. And that would tell the story. If you had those dates, you'd know a lot more about what might have happened.
Right.
But my God, honey, it was 70 years ago. How far?
It's a long time ago.
70? No, 80. I mean, we've been married 75 years, so it was be 77 years ago.
Wow.
And here we are trying to figure out what happened.
Wow.
Kind of silly. We probably should just forget it. But if listen, when the PEO girls were here Tuesday, what have you been doing? I said, well, I've been trying to get this information for the VA, and so Betty Ann Kinsey says to me, well, we got income for my husband Daryl because he'd lost his hearing, and the VA paid him a lump sum, and now we get $800 a month, every month, as a pension because he was working with where the jet engines were, and they said that's why he lost his hearing, and so they get $800 a month. And now I tried to call her, and I left a message because I didn't hear. This was not a time to talk about these things. I said I'm going to ask her now I asked her on a message. I said, can you tell me how long ago he was granted this compensation? When was that? And did you have to get his service record first? Now, I haven't heard back from her. It may have been a long time ago, or it may have been just recently. And I'd like to know.
So if Bill gets awarded money from the exposure to radiation, that would be good.
That's what this guy, he says they have already given out money for that. It's not the first one. We don't know how much or how many people, but for several. Probably not for the ones that were with Bill, but it's for the ones that were on ships when they blew up that island.
Right.
And island, and it disappeared more because it was more powerful than they had thought. And there were ships that were stationed around the edges to watch, and they were radiated. Men were suffering from radiation that were on board those ships.
Right.
So they're the ones that got the compensation. Okay, some were stationed in the U.S. in the desert when they'd set up little pretend buildings. Testing.
Yeah.
Yes. Now we got this questionnaire, and it's for people that were. They say, how close were you to the test? Blah blah blah. And then the next question is, what ship were you on? And blah blah blah. Okay, nothing about Nagasaki or Hiroshima until the very bottom. They ask you, were you anywhere near Nagasaki or Hiroshima within such and such a time? So, they've been dealing with the radiation questions, but it mostly had to do with the ships or with the tests in the United States desert. But apparently they do mention Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
I know. I watched a documentary one time, and some of the men who trained when they were dropping bombs in America, was it in Utah?
Yeah, someplace out west.
So he talked to me, he talked about hiding in a trench.
Yeah.
And then they dropped the bomb, and he said guys were running away from the bomb, running towards, away from the bomb. And he said, I was looking at this man, and he thought to himself, what does that man have on? He thought it was like a different jacket to help protect him. And he said as the man was running, he realized that his skin was falling off his arms as he was running away.
It's horrible.
So that was on TV pretty recently.
Well,
And
you
again-
know, for many years they didn't want the public to know how bad it was.
Yeah, and all these men who are talking about this are in their, like, well, it was probably documented about 10 years ago, so they were probably in their 80s at the time.
Yeah.
When they told this
But
story.
they lived, whatever problems
However
they had.
they lived, they
their life-
lived.
They had
These men lived.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Lived
Yeah.
to tell about it.
Yeah. Well, now people are not as aware, maybe. They don't want to think about it. It's unpleasant. And we've just about, but when Kathy and Barbara were in grade school, you know, they had exercises to get under your desk, which of course is stupid,
they,
you know.
they did that at my school.
Did they? You know.
Yeah, because we were still like, that would have been in 1960.
Yeah, they were still doing
Well, it was the Vietnam and the Russians and blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
all,
No.
yeah, like that's going to do anything, you crawling under your desk.
Well, but now Biden is, like I said, poking Putin in the face, trying to make him mad. They're just crazy enough to shoot off an atomic weapon at us. He's just crazy enough to do it.
I don't know.
I don't think it will happen, but you know, hope it doesn't. Pray it doesn't.
There's something more going on with that war over there than, because I don't think Putin as a leader, you know, is that bad, because he is, for one, he's a nationalist, not a globalist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like he doesn't want a one world order. He's like,
Yeah.
and he's very supportive. You know, he is supportive of his country.
Yeah, he wants his country to be the big fish. You know,
Right,
yeah,
right.
okay,
And he even supports his citizens to carry their own guns.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah. So I just can't. I don't quite understand what's going on. Over
I
there.
don't either.
And I think Putin. I believe that Putin and Trump are talking. That's what I believe. That there's something more to what we're
See,
seeing.
Biden wants to make Russia be the big bad guy because he wants to connect Trump to the big bad guy. He wants to say that Putin backed Trump in the election, helped him. Okay, so therefore, if Trump is a bad guy, then Putin must be a really bad guy because he helped him. So he wants us all to hate Russia, and that might be what he's trying to do. But I mean, I don't hate Russia, but I think there's something very badly wrong somewhere.
Right.
I mean, they've always been. They're not. You know, they've never been our buddies.
No, they haven't.
We were allies to help each other in the war, but World War II. But I can't help feeling awfully sorry for the people in Ukraine. But I don't want us to get into a war because of them.
Right. And they've always said, I've heard this over the years, that the Ukrainian people have always been very, very oppressed. You know, spiritually, like they're very, restricted
Okay.
in their churches. Like they're very, I don't know. I don't want to say communistic, but they're very, very persecuted if they're Christian.
Yes.
Christian Ukrainians are persecuted,
Well,
is what I
that's what's up.
understood.
Yeah. Well,
And like,
the communists don't believe in religion anyway, so probably. But I don't know anything about that. I haven't kept up with it. But I just don't. At first I was so sympathetic with the Ukrainians that I just thought we should do something bad to Russia. But then I heard, the more I heard about it, the less I thought. I said, this is a complicated thing.
we need to be allied. I don't know. It's a mess. In my opinion, we need to be allied with Russia. And of course, Biden's son has done some. I don't know what he's done. Something in Ukraine. Biden's son is connected to Ukraine.
Well, he's connected to a lot of crooked stuff all around
Right,
the world, I
they
guess.
all are.
China.
Hey, you know what we could do? If I could figure out how to get that TV to go to YouTube, we could watch the 30-minute special that you probably haven't seen about you guys,
I don't.
if
well,
you want to.
How? What do you have to be able to do? It's not up to date, you know. It's kind of old.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a smart TV. It looks like it is.
Well, we're on Comcast, but we don't subscribe to everything.
I'm on Comcast too.
We don't subscribe to the old movies and stuff.
Oh no, neither do I.
But you could try.
All I have is rabbit ears. They still
Oh,
make
well,
those.
hell.
They make those.
We ought to be able to get any. Whatever you can
You would
get.
not believe how simple I live my life. I have a clothesline in my backyard.
I used to have a clothesline out on the golf course.
Really?
Yeah, society of women looked down their nose at me because I was hanging my clothes out while they walked by with their golf clubs.
Do you know what it's like to have your clothes air dried on a clothesline?
Yeah, I like
it just feels so,
Yeah,
I don't know, freeing.
yeah, they smell good and they're nice. No, I used to do that.